What a pleasant voice.
Yeah,
Just
we
up
have
the
a couple
pressure,
more
right,
minutes.
John?
What's that again?
Just keep upping the pressure, right?
Oh, no, no, no. The delete button is very easy. I mean, if we don't like it, I will not be on. But just like the library, lots of times the library will put up a program after the event because people were, had another thing on that same night, so that they.
Sue Meadows had sent me an email earlier, just wishing luck and saying that if it was recorded, she'd like to be able to view. I think she's open till 9 o'clock tonight, these next 2 weeks
Sure.
before Christmas.
Yep. Yep. So, well, it is 7 o'clock. So what we're going to do is get started. And so since we are Zoom, just a little bit of background as to where we're going to go and what we're going to do. As far as we're going to start off with the secretary's report. And I don't know if anybody noticed this time, but at the very bottom of the invite, we put down click here for the entire minutes. But what I'm going to do is pass it over to Linda and let her give the secretary's report, if you would.
What I'm going to do is just read a condensed version of the minutes, but if you do wish to see the entire minutes, you can follow the link that came with the Zoom invitation for this meeting. So these are the minutes from the annual banquet, which was held on September 18th at Phoenixville Country Club. And this was the business meeting which preceded the program. President John Keenan convened the meeting at 1:30 p.m. with 87 persons in attendance. President-elect Dave Meadows led the Pledge of Allegiance and then introduced Reverend Sam Coons, who offered the invocation. His father was a previous pastor at Central Lutheran Church. Martha Parker read the minutes from the June quarterly meeting. Paul Kusko moved and Frank Kolar seconded to accept the minutes. Motion carried. Julian McCracken presented the treasurer's report with a summary of financial information for the 2021-22 fiscal year, which ended with a net income of $50,206.43. Barbara Cohen moved and Bob Dager seconded to accept the treasurer's report. Motion carried. And Julian also extended his thanks to Dwayne Parker for all of his assistance as he took over the position of treasurer. Under President's report, John reviewed highlights of the 2021-22 year and announced events which were upcoming at that time. Following that, Jack Ertel presented certificates of appreciation to Martha Parker and Warren Brown, who were both leaving the board. And he also recognized incoming board members, Director Karl Miller and myself, recording secretary, and presented each of us with a copy of Annals of Phoenixville. He then presented special awards in recognition to 3 longtime members who have each served in various capacities for 25 years. They were Bob Dager, who was instrumental in setting up and maintaining our initial computer operations, Ed Naratil, who has done a great deal of accessioning and is a great source of information over the years, and Margie Rohrbach, whose multiple jobs have included serving as membership secretary and running the kitchen for any and all events involving food. Each of these members was presented with special certificates. President John Keenan presented a President's Award of Honor to Kevin Stewart in appreciation for all of his hard work organizing and running the Max Sold online auctions. This was the conclusion of the business meeting and was followed by a presentation about the history of the society by Jack Ertel and a presentation by John Keenan about the planned renovations of our building and phase 1 of the capital campaign. Respectfully submitted, Linda Keenan, recording secretary.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion.
I
Martha
see Martha.
Parker.
Okay,
Second?
Second.
Julian? All right. All in favor, just raise your hand and we'll get it. Okay, thank you. All right, and Julian, does anyone have any questions about the minutes before we go on? Julian, treasurer's report.
Okay, you can hear me okay. This will be for the first quarter, obviously. Are happy to say as was reported about the max sold auctions so far this year, we've taken in a little bit over $11,638 in max sold auctions, which is excellent. Membership dues, we've taken in $2,817. Income wise for the quarter, we've taken in $19,475, and expenses have been $19,104. You should know of those expenses. We did a computer upgrade, which is in the middle of being installed today and tomorrow, and the computer purchases amounted to $7,482. So that took care of a great deal of the money that we've expended so far in the quarter. So our net income for operating purposes and investments is $371.44. And just a quick update for you on the capital campaign to date, and this is from the start of when the monies started coming in a couple of years ago. The income for the capital campaign is $191,384, and we have a pledge balance. Those who still have, what they've done is they've made pledges that'll continue through this year and the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. The pledge balance stands at $251,250. So those are the highlights, and that's what I have for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Julian. And if I could have a motion and a second.
Make a motion.
Okay, and that was who?
Ginger?
Ginger. Oh, thank you. And I think a second. Did I see Joyce Dexter?
Got it.
All right. All in favor, raise your hand. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Julian. Anyone have any questions for Julian? Okay, as far as President's report, we've hit on a couple of the things that I wanted to mention. As far as you already heard what Julian said, and we're getting closer and closer to meeting our goal of phase 1 of the capital campaign. The latest total I had when you add everything together, the pledges and so forth, was $442,721.76. But what Julian doesn't know, I got a donation today for another $5,000. Yay. So they just keep coming in. And if you have a donation you want to make before the year end, please do so. As you heard also, those computer upgrades, I was in talking to Jerry and Bob Feedick. The new router is in, and the new server is in with a 4 terabyte server. This increases from we used to have a 1 terabyte server. So all 8 workstations will be replaced with new Dell computers running Windows 11, and each sporting a new larger monitor. What a great present for all the volunteers. The flea market, as far as it is getting closer and closer, even though it's not until Saturday, January 28th from 9 to 1, but don't worry, there'll be the members preview on Friday night from 7 to 9. And jewelry will more than likely be on the first level, like it was in the winter of 2020, before we had to close down some of those auctions and things. Speaking of auctions, we are planning to hold a special auction to benefit the capital campaign. Please consider some special donations for that auction so we can raise a larger total just for the capital campaign. Think old coins, jewelry you don't wear anymore, especially sterling and gold, mid-century modern items, anything special that you'd like to donate. When you bring it in, let Kevin know it's for the capital campaign. In March, our quarterly meeting, we're actually planning an in-person one on March 15th. We've been in contact with the Methodist Church to use their fellowship hall. Now that will give us a couple of things. It will be a first floor, lots of parking, and it seats many more than we ever could at Phoenix Federal. The topic, as we have been talking about, is planned to be famous women from Phoenixville. So it should be a very interesting one. Finally, I want to thank the amazing members who have supported the capital campaign, and also just say to everyone that I have the best board and volunteers. They step up to every challenge and contribute to the success of the Historical Society. And I'm just so proud to be their president and to be working with them day in and day out. So that concludes my president's message. If anyone has any questions or comments.
Owen?
All right, sensing none, then I'm going to turn the program over to Karl Miller, who's going to be, as we've talked about, he's done quite a bit of research. And before he even starts, I'll just apologize. We are having a problem with, he had embedded 2 or 3 YouTubes that we're supposed to play, and we can play them, but regrettably, the sound volume is not coming through. If anybody has a trick that we could try when we hit the first one, let us know and we'll try. Otherwise, we're going to pass it over to Karl, and when you're ready, Karl, take it away. And thank you.
I believe I'm ready, John. Thank you very much. So I guess first, let's look to screen share and bring up our program for this evening. And can everyone see the how we celebrate?
Yes.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that we got everybody on the same page. First of all, for those that I haven't had the great privilege of meeting yet, my name's Karl Miller. You know, through the intervention of Paul Cusco, I was invited to join the board of the Historic Society this past year, and it's really a great honor. I'm a child of Phoenixville. I was born in Phoenixville Hospital. I was educated at St. Anne's. I grew up in this town. I learned how to swim at the Phoenixville Y with Don Coppage, and this town, like for those of us that were born here, I think Phoenixville is just embedded in us in some way. In addition with being passionate about Phoenixville, one of the other things I've always been deeply passionate about is Christmas time. I remember years and years back at the conclusion of Thanksgiving dinner, my father packing all of us in the car and heading to downtown to drive around. It would be the first night that the lights were turned on. And again, anybody who grew up in Phoenixville will remember these type of things. That very first night when all the lights went on, the overhead lights as you drove through downtown Phoenixville, and then we journey up to Spring City and Royersford to make it a whole evening. Driving around looking at Christmas lights was just such a source of joy. You know, and when we used to, when downtown was more of a retail hub, you know, in the 60s and 70s, every year they have window painting contests, and you would just stroll the streets, and your friends and neighbors would paint the most glorious Christmas pictures on the windows of stores like Bats and Grant's and Seacrest. And again, a wonderful memory of living in this town around holiday season. Seeing Santa driving through town on fire trucks, which, thanks to, I believe it's Dave Meadows' son, we still continue a tradition like that. And I wanted to put together a little something that celebrated some of those traditions, how we celebrate, how we go about, you know, recognizing the Christmas season, primarily in our houses of worship, but I've also included a couple other references as part of this presentation. I'm sure some people might have additional thoughts to add or memories to add as we go through this. Please feel free to participate. If you see something that triggers a memory, or perhaps at the end of the program, you might wish to say something about one of the churches that we visit or one of the scenes that we see. As John mentioned, we had a couple of nice videos to share, and I'm going to hit play, but I don't think it's going to work. But please let me know if you hear anything. And I'm taking that that's a no. So I'm glad to forward this PowerPoint to anybody that would like it at the conclusion of tonight, or if John wants to post it somewhere. But one of the things that I was hoping to include were a couple of the musical moments with memories of the Phoenixville area at Christmas time. This clip here, the Phoenixville Concert Choir from the high school always has the alumni come up on stage and join them in a presentation at the end. And this was a nice little presentation of Carol of the Bells that was included in tonight's presentation. I really wanted to kick off, and this was the reason that I stepped up when John was looking for somebody to do a presentation for the holiday season. I wanted to start with what I consider the single most beautiful piece of art in Phoenixville. For those that grew up in St. Anne's, You've probably stared at this window hundreds, if not thousands of times over the years. For people who have walked up Third Avenue over the course of the time, you've probably seen it, perhaps with a light cast on it, because when you see it magnified by light, it is just glorious. This is the nativity window that hangs in St. Anne's Church. When the St. Anne's Church was built in 1907, the Byrne family contracted with a German glass manufacturer who we think from our research was Meyer of Munich. St. Anne's doesn't have any records exactly saying who it is, but based on the art and based on some history, there's a glass studio in Berlin called Meyer of Munich, and we believe that's where the window came from. It was commissioned by the Byrne family to be a part of St. Anne's Church when the church was built in 1907. It's just a glorious piece of art. It celebrates the nativity. If you notice at the bottom in Latin, it says Salus Mundi. That translates as the salvation of the world. You see the star reflecting down on the baby Jesus at the time of his birth. You see the visit from the wise men. You see the shepherds. Everything that goes into a celebration of Christmas appears in this window. And as I said, it's just glorious how it was manufactured and then installed by the Byrnes. For those that know St. Anne's, and I'm sure most of you have probably heard this story already, one of the unique things about St. Anne's Church, the Byrne family paid to have this built as a tribute to Mr. Byrne's mother, Anne, which is why it is named St. Anne's. It's also a reliquary, I think is the correct word, which means there's bodies in the basement. It's one of a small number of churches in the Archdiocese of Philadelphia that is a memorial church. And Mrs. Byrne, Mr. Byrne, a couple other members of the Byrne family, and the first pastor of St. Anne's Parish are all buried in the basement of St. Anne's Church. Another tradition at St. Anne's, this Advent wreath has been hanging since the 70s. It's in recognition of the Advent season. With Advent wreaths of this nature, there's always 4 candles, 3 purple, 1 rose, that are lit one each week to commemorate the coming of the Savior at the time of, at Christmas time. St. Anne's School always celebrated Christmas with a party for their children and all. I chose this picture in particular, not because there's somebody in here who is presenting and they spelled his name wrong, but this picture is proof for all of those that have ever heard the story about Danny Bonaducci growing up in Phoenixville. If you look and see who is on Santa's lap in this photo, there is Danny Bonaducci. So all those stories that I see John Keenan putting on his glasses to read the description. But yes, the stories that you heard are true. The Bonaducci family lived in Birch Runville in an old schoolhouse. Mr. Bonaducci worked at the Philadelphia Zoo and used to bring home animals from the zoo. So they would have alligators and other animals crawling all through the schoolhouse. The Bonaduccis went to St. Anne's for a couple of years until they moved to California. And there's Danny sitting on Santa's lap for the Christmas celebration at St. Anne's in 1964.
And that's Carl.
Very cool.
That's Carl.
And yeah, that's over here on the far end. That would be me, at the age of 6 years old.
And they spelled his name wrong. Oh, well.
Pageants were always a big part of the celebration of Christmas at our schools and churches in the 50s, 60s, 70s. A pageant traditionally combined elements of both the religious and the secular celebration of the holidays. And here's a pageant at St. Anne's Church from 1952, where a number of participants, dressed in costume, celebrated the season, performed for families and full audiences back in the day. I believe from my research that that the Baptist Church of Phoenixville might be one of, if not our oldest congregations. The Baptist Church was founded in 1830, which I think predates almost every church in Phoenixville. A couple of years ago, the Baptist Church had kind of a reorganization and changed its name to Grace Crossing. This is at the corner, for those that don't recognize it, it's right at the corner of Church and Gay. They are coming up on their 200th birthday, something for the society to keep in mind. I'm sure that the 200th anniversary of a church is an occasion for them to celebrate their bicentennial, and it might give us an opportunity to acquire some of the historic information and see that it's preserved, because as I'll get to a little bit later in this presentation, we're losing our churches in this town, and we hopefully as a society might be able to take an active step in seeing if we lose the church, at least the history stays within the community. While Grace Crossing has somewhat transformed the manner in which they celebrate Christmas from the origins of the Baptist Church, they have decorations from the early 1900s that are put out every year, candles and wreaths and all, and they're on display inside the church. We were invited to come in at Christmas time and take a look at the church, and I was asked to extend that invitation to everyone. There's an antique pipe organ in Grace Crossing that is only played a couple times a year because nobody knows how to play it, which I found real interesting. They did find someone who was coming out to play on Christmas Eve for them. But again, if you've never seen the organ in there and you have any interest in music, encourage you to stop in and take a look at it. It's a gorgeous old antique pipe organ. One of the things going through newspapers, preparing this presentation for everybody, back in the day, you had pages and pages and pages of advertisements in the Phoenixville Republican, recognizing the holiday season, inviting you to come participate at a given church's service. And here's the Baptist Church back in 1955, inviting everyone to candlelight service at 11 o'clock on Christmas Eve. I'm sorry Barb Cohen isn't here, because I'd love to see if she had anything to share about Congregation B'nai Jacob. But as everyone knows, this is our Jewish home in the Phoenixville community. And while they didn't have any pictures of it to share, and I put in a word that this is the kind of history they want to be preserving as well, B'nai Jacob every year puts a large menorah out on their front lawn. Every day during Hanukkah, another candle is lit on the menorah until all 8 candles are lit. They've been doing this for a number of decades. Hanukkah commences this year on December 18th. And so I encourage you to drive by B'nai Jacob, starting on the 18th, and see the outdoor menorah with the display and the nightly lighting of the menorah. For years, the congregation celebrated the first day of Hanukkah inside the synagogue, and would have a large party for all their students of the congregation to come, celebrate Hanukkah with chocolates and dreidels and all those things that make up the Hanukkah celebration. And this was from a couple years ago when I had mentioned about the menorah lighting. They call it menorah or manavan, even though I think the menorah actually faces Star Street. But they for every night will put up a new light on the menorah as we go through the 8 days of Hanukkah. Anybody that's walked down Gay Street during the Christmas season should recognize this scene from St. John's UCC. St. John's has been putting out a manger creche every year to draw the attention of passersby as they walk along or drive past Gay Street. This is again a decades-old tradition. It's right on Gay Street. St. John's UCC is right between First and Second Avenue, and this creche scene has been out there providing an opportunity to reflect on the season, for years and years. Our United Methodist Church out on Main Street heading towards Schuylkill presents a live nativity every year. This is a scene from one of the more recent live nativities that they've had at the Methodist Church, and the Methodists are among many that present a live nativity scene. For years, Grace Bible, right next to the Acme, presented a live nativity. Unfortunately, with COVID, they have stopped presenting theirs every year. Valley Forge, the Methodist church, as you head to Valley Forge Park on the right-hand side coming out of Phoenixville, they do a live nativity every year, and theirs will be held this year on December 18th at 5 o'clock if anybody is interested in attending. John and I and anybody who has any history with the Phoenixville JCs will recall for years and years, we always presented a live nativity in Reeves Park the weekend before Christmas with live animals, and some of us had experiences getting bit with Mr. Jugan from Kimberton's from his lambs and the animals that he used to bring with us. But live nativities have been a part of the celebration for Christmas for years in the Phoenixville area. I had a second video for the Methodist Church in Phoenixville is well known for its bell choir, and they perform not only during the holiday season, but also all year long. If you have the opportunity, I can't encourage you enough to catch their performance. This version of the Holly and the Ivy was absolutely gorgeous. In looking up, and some of these stories I've just thrown in for laughs, and some of them have a connection to us and all, but the Methodists almost didn't have Christmas in 1962. On Christmas Eve, they went downstairs and saw that their boiler had blown up. And and the insides of their church, which used to be down on Church Street as well, were covered with soot and made the church unusable for Christmas Eve. And I was hoping Dave Meadows was here because it was Phoenixville Hook and Ladder that stepped up and saved Christmas for the Methodists in 1962. They volunteered their newly added.
How do you think?
Pardon me? They volunteered their newly added annex so that there was a place for the Methodists to hold services that Christmas, saving the day. I just thought this is gorgeous. I know a lot of us are familiar with St. John's Lutheran Church, and this is a picture of St. John from St. John's original location down on Jackson Street. But this photo came from the early 20th century at the corner of Church and Jackson. Some more from the early days of St. John's.
Okay, I'm leaving the meeting.
And again, going to the advertising for the holiday season. Here's St. John's listing its Christmas services from 1955. They had Christmas Eve by candlelight at their, and this was still when they were on Church and Jackson streets, inviting the family to come. Here's an article from 1962 announcing St. John's first Christmas in their new home when they relocated out to Schuylkill Township on St. John's Circle. And here's the celebration inside St. John's, Christmas 1977. this is St. John's truly captures the spirit of the holidays at Christmas time. They decorate the church beautifully. Their services are are musical and just so well done, and this captures the true look of St. John's at Christmas time. St. John's also does an annual Christmas pageant, a live nativity involving their children. St. Anne's also does a children's pageant every year. Again, celebrating the birth of Christ with music and children performers. It's just great to see these kind of traditions, which the churches have had for decades, continue on. This picture John Keenan had found for me, and I just think it's so cool because this is our home. This is the Historic Society's home. This was when it was Central Lutheran Church back in the 1950s. You'll see the decorations, a more simple approach to the holiday season, but when you look at where we're holding our flea markets and our activities nowadays, here you see what it looked like as a church back 70 years ago. Sacred Heart was always less ornate, more from the heart with just trees and flowers at Christmas time. And and looking at this picture, I referenced earlier about how we need to pay attention to the history of our churches. I'm not sure if everybody saw this week, but the beginning of the week, the Archdiocese of Philadelphia announced that Sacred Heart has officially been deconsecrated, meaning that it is no longer a house of worship. The property has not been used to its full extent over the last few years, and I know there's just a huge portion of the town that is mourning the loss of Sacred Heart, and everything that it meant to their families for generations and generations. The building is getting some nice usage as Anne's Heart is continuing to use the school for its warming station to provide services to the homeless and also providing other services to the community. But Anne's Heart is purchasing the building from St. Anne's. And because the school and the church could not be separated, they had to, the word is relegate the church to a non holy usage. And so this past Tuesday, I believe the announcement came down from Archbishop Perez that Sacred Heart had officially had its consecrated status removed. As I said, just tragic for the people who grew up in that parish, a lot of whom are longtime residents of Phoenixville. An incentive for groups like us and others to really make sure that we preserve the history of buildings and family legacies like that represented by Sacred Heart Church. St. Mary's over on the north side, and St. Mary's is the first Catholic church in Phoenixville. St. Mary's was built in 1840. It was the first Catholic church, and Holy Trinity and other churches grew off of St. Mary. Another interesting thing about St. Mary, if you see the painting in the background, that painting is called the Crucifixion. It's by a German painter, Rudolf Schmalzl, who painted it in 1927. Schmalzl is a well-known artist of churches and other holy structures throughout Germany. And I haven't been able to figure out how he ended up in Phoenixville, of all places, to paint for a church here when historically all his work is all over Germany. So I'm hoping one day to get an answer to that question because it kind of fascinates me. Holy Ghost Church, which a lot of people know as the parking lot for downtown Phoenixville, unfortunately, Just again does a beautiful service every year around the holidays. The Orthodox Church celebrates Christmas later than most other Christians do. They celebrate January 6th. And here's a look inside Holy Ghost. One of the other things they do at Holy Ghost, which again, a beautiful tradition that has been handed down from family to family, is lighting candles at the foot of the manger. You see a picture here from just a couple years ago where we're at the manger scene. Families are kneeling and lighting a candle, welcoming the baby Jesus, the light of the world, to the world. Holy Trinity is when I spoke about Sacred Heart, I fear Holy Trinity someday might face the same outcomes. It was twinned with St. Mary's some time ago, and it doesn't get the amount of usage that it used to. Holy Trinity, for those that don't know, was established in the early 1900s. There were a number of Polish immigrants working in Phoenixville in the 1900s, and they attended St. Mary's, but they wanted a parish of their own. And it was Polish immigrants who raised the money in order for Holy Trinity to be built in the early 1900s. The inside of this church is just gorgeous. And if you've never been in, I encourage you to find some time when it is open to go inside and look at all the icons and the other beautiful items inside Holy Trinity Church. Just another look at their decorating for Christmas with the trees and the manger scenes and everything. So that completes our walk through some of the churches. There were just a couple other things that I had thrown into the presentation, and I'm just about to wrap up. But a few things that I wanted to include, and this picture in particular it's incredibly personal to me, but it also should have meaning to anybody probably of a certain older age who grew up in this town or lived in this town. This is Phoenixville's Santa Claus from the 1950s and 60s. This is my grandfather, Edward Gavin. My grandfather owned the United Tobacco Store at the corner of Main and Prospect Street. It's where Artifact is now. My grandfather was a rogue and a character and beloved in the community. He had a number of businesses over the years, but every year on Christmas, he went to all the schools in Phoenixville dressed as Santa, handing out hard candy to kids. And every year, like with his own money and taking his own time, he dressed up as Santa and went through the town delivering presents to underprivileged families and children so that those families had the opportunity to have Christmas. He's a wonderful guy, and everybody that I've ever met that knew my grandfather has tremendous stories to tell about him and on. So, putting together something about Christmas, I just wanted to include him as part of it. I included for John's sake. This was a celebration at the Oddfellows Temple in 1962. The music was provided at this celebration by John's aunt, Linda. Shirley, I'm sorry, John. My bad. Who apparently was quite the musician, from what I've heard.
Pianist.
Yes, quite a pianist indeed. And many of you know Park Snyder. Park was here as part of this celebration as well. Another town Santa celebrating at the Hungarian Club in 1962. Something we don't hear much of anymore and all, but was a big part of Christmas celebrations, everybody's Christmas Club. Are they even, I believe somebody from the society had posted the tiles from Phoenixville Federal this week. When you opened up a Christmas club at Phoenix Federal, I think in the 70s, for 8 years in a row, they had these collector tiles that they would give you. And then they had plates and other items that they would give. But back in the day, this is 1945, which is the year that World War II ended. And people in Phoenixville saved over $217,000 in their Christmas clubs so that they could afford to buy gifts that year or whatever it was that they chose to use the money for. The largest Christmas clubs were at the Farmers and Mechanics Bank, and and Phoenixville Trust was also a big source for Christmas clubs. Another thing that I found, we've had many famous visitors over the years to Phoenixville, and while I was down putting together some research for this project, I was shown this spectacular picture of Fats Waller playing at Valley Forge Army Hospital, entertaining the soldiers that were there. I found this one a little more touching even. Again, it's the end of World War II. A number of soldiers are home for the first time celebrating Christmas, and many soldiers are out at Valley Forge Army Hospital. Well, they're spending their first Christmas home in the hospital in Phoenixville, and Helen Keller came to visit them and spent 2 days at Valley Forge Army Hospital visiting with blind soldiers, trying to provide them with hope and encouragement, as they learn to deal with their disabilities as a result of their war injuries. And everybody in this story that has quotes in there just raves about how kind Helen Keller was when she came to visit them. Just thought a neat little piece of history that probably not too many of us know anything about, but another famous visitor to our town over the years. Couple pieces of advertising to close out. Again, if you go back and you look at our newspapers from the 40s and 50s, there's pages and pages of season's greetings from the different businesses in town. It's just something, something that was wonderful that unfortunately with the demise of print newspapers, we've lost things like this. But if you get a chance to look through them, a full page ad from Showalter's Dairy from back in 1952, celebrating the season and extending good wishes to all. And then, of course, there's the Christmas sales, grants, where everybody went Christmas shopping in Phoenixville. And Toyland, this was the year that Phoenix Variety was going out of business. They opened up Toyland the day after Thanksgiving. Phoenixville Variety, I guess, when it closed down, it then became Whitey's. And was Whitey's for decades until the Sikorsky family closed up business a few years back. That building is now the Arts Village, I believe. So, and I had one last video. Unfortunately, we won't get to see that, but the middle school choir singing as well. And as I said, I'm glad to forward this on to anybody that would want to share it with people, and you'll be able to hear the music clips. And that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to do in our presentation. I hope I was able to give some nice memories and a good reflection on how we've celebrated Christmas, Hanukkah, and other seasonal joys over the decades here in Phoenixville. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to put something like this together, because it put a lot of joy in my heart. Reading through these old ads and seeing some of these old scenes, it's a real nice reminder of the kind of community that we have here. And with that, I'll close, and I'll thank John again for the great privilege of being able to present to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. What an amazing presentation.
It was great.
We really enjoyed it.
Do you want to go back to speaker view and then we can see everybody?
Absolutely. Let me
unstop for a moment.
stop share. There we go.
Okay. So does anyone, and I don't want to open up too much, but does anyone have a question or anything that or something they'd like to share with Carl? I mean, it just brought back tons of memories as I was watching this and doing this and everything.
Yeah, I'd jump in on his, one of the early shots was the Advent wreath hanging in St. Anne's Chapel. There are actually two. One hangs in the church and one hangs at the chapel. And when Father Doyne was still there, he came up with this idea that he wanted an Advent wreath that floated in the air instead of being on a table. My wife at the time was the person that was in charge of decorating the church. And so we came up with this concept that we actually did this in live greens, not the artificial ones that are in that picture. So every year I would gather greens from the trees around town and weave that wreath. And I'd haul my 30-foot extension ladder into the church, stick it between the pews and go up to the beam to the top of the church to hang that. And I don't know why I did it, because I'm afraid of heights, but I was blown away when we saw that. And so those things are still in use. And they held 4 candles securely and never caught on fire. So it was great to see that. Thank you, Carl.
Oh, such a wonderful memory. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that with us.
Yeah, great.
Good job, Carl. Very good. Very
Okay.
entertaining.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank
This is
you.
I'll confess to nerves. I know all of you share a love for this town as much as I do, being you're involved here, and this being the first time that I've tried to put something together for all of you. It's like, I have to make sure I'm accurate, and I hope to to capture enough of it to give everybody something that they might be able to identify with or relate to. So I'm glad that everybody found something joyful in watching.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes,
very much.
very good.
Thanks
Thank you.
again, Carl. And we'd never
you.
have known that you were nervous. You
Yeah.
seem just
No.
have the whole
You're-
rolling so smooth. I know you had
Yes.
researched and rehearsed this quite a bit, and we thank you. And if no one else has any other comments or questions, we'll just wish everyone the best holiday season and health and happiness, with everyone. And does anyone have anything else before we?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas,
Merry
everyone.
Merry
Christmas.
Christmas.
All right.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Carl.
Have a
Nice
good night,
job.
everybody,
Yeah,
and Merry
great.
Christmas.
Nice job, Carl.
And to you
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think your grandfather would be proud of you, Carl.
Yes.
Aw,
You would.
Yes.
really kind of
Sure
you to
would.
say.
That's great.
Well, shortly, I'll send you a couple of pictures from the JC's days. The
Okay.
I found some 1982 live nativity scenes with Tom Benning with a donkey. And,
I remember one year, John, when we had, I forget who it was, but whoever we sent up on the roof to be the angel, because we would literally put people up on top of the band shell when we did the live nativity for the community when we were all JCs. And we put some young lady up there, and I can't remember who it
I
was,
think it was Elaine Chernus.
but she was terrified
Yeah.
and she was too afraid to come down because oh man.
I know
Great
at least
memory.
1 or 2 years we actually had a real baby even.
I know we had I remember at least one year when we had a real baby.
Wow.
Memories for sure. You
Yep.
brought back many fun memories today. Thank you.
Awesome. That was the goal. And if I did that, then I accomplished what I set out to do.
Yes, you
Thank you
did.
again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you. God bless.
Great.
Mhm. God
Have a good
bless.
night, everybody.